You grew up just outside of Denver and joined Ricca in 2015, almost 10 years ago, or over 10 years ago. After having roles in graphic design and hospitality purchasing, how have those early experiences shaped your approach now as a principal in food service design?
Oh, wow. Well, I feel like I've always been growing and always trying to learn from my past experiences. When I started at Ricca, I didn't realize how much uh, things that I felt were not even applicable have always just been in the back of my mind. When I think about how much I studied in school with graphics, the pride I still feel when I'm sending out a drawing to make sure it's up to snuff and that it's looking good and aesthetically pleasing. So all those things I learned, whether, it's not a drafting set that I was necessarily looking at or a drawing of a dish room, but I always feel like, is there a cool way we can present this information? And then procurement on its own, every time we're writing a spec or putting out a quote together, just really getting into the details to always make sure it's up to quality. So I didn't do that for a terribly long time, but little did I know how much it would actually teach me down the road when it's such a core thing that we're doing here at Ricca to make sure our clients, are getting exactly what they want and need.
Yeah, I think adding that touch of, like, for lack of a better term, prettiness to a presentation always adds a little bit. What do you do to up your spec drawings or your submissions to an architect?
Well, we're always looking at new technologies, and we take cues from the architects we work with. How are they delivering their graphics, and showing that here at Ricca we're just as capable of as any architecture firm, as any interior designer. We're a talented group, and people think of food service and it's just equipment and kitchens, and it's not all that sexy, but it really can be. And we're utilizing tools like Enscape to show off cool 3D walkthroughs of the spaces, really let operators and end users see it. Architects give that wow factor. Even just really working with inside Revit to give better perspectives outside of just 2D plans, which I think some end users have a hard time really understanding and appreciating all the details we're trying to pack into our plans. And just putting that onto paper, we always talk about our standards of our plans and the information we're providing, and we're always tweaking it to see what's the best way to detail that. So an example from this week was working on a pulper extractor system, talking about waste in a dish room. And it could seem like, yeah, all you need is a CAD drawing, but there's some cool graphics that we're working on to really show the end users with diagrams on how the waste streams function and flow. And it doesn't just need to be a hard set of construction documents. It could have layers of information. So how do we layer that and make it easy to understand for everybody that gets our documents?
Yeah, you're really trying to bring the project to life and trying to communicate your design off of just a 2D page and using that perspective to do that's very nice, very cool. So your degree is in environmental design with an architecture emphasis and a minor in landscape architecture and graphics. How does that multidiscipline background inform your vision when you're starting a new project?
Well, maybe not so much the landscape design. I really thought that would be my path at one point, but certainly from the architecture.
What made you go away from it?
Well, I think because I found Ricca, and I felt like this was a good career path, and full of good people, and let me live in Colorado and do all these fun things and work with some clients I don't think I could have ever imagined working with if I picked doing landscape. And I don't think I really wanted to go back to school after finishing my undergrad. So I think that was an important part of it. But anyways, I really, quickly learned, what Ricca was doing, and the people I get to work with and the types of projects was important to me to be able to say I get to work on these types of projects. And then back to the question of architecture and environmental design, certainly, just the appreciation I can get from architects who are, at the core, who we're working with mostly on a daily basis outside of the end users and clients, and for learning, everything it takes to get these projects done, everyone within the architecture firms and their roles, just having that appreciation of all the details they have to get into and making their jobs easier. And then from the environmental design, certainly sustainability is at the core of us as Ricca and where kitchen and food service design is always heading. We're trying to be more sustainable. We're trying to educate architects and end users on what is out there. What does it mean to be more sustainable in this climate, and what can we do on our end to help that? And also, give them a system that works for them. So we have some great examples of recent work we've done in studies to weigh out sustainable options, whether it's, the power in the kitchen going all electric, waste streams, what's out there, and educating people.
Gotcha. Yeah, you're really trying to, I mean, as a consultant, of course, trying to make your client's life easier, and starting a project with that emphasis in your mind is really, I think, what makes you such a great principal and how you're going to grow into this role so well. You worked your way through roles like a busser, host, barista, and event staff during your education. What operational insights from those like frontline roles do you still bring to the table when you're designing back of house spaces and guest experience spaces?
It just getting to do those roles gives you an appreciation of why we design the way we are, and really to get into the details. Working as a busser and working in a dish room, those types of tough environments, I remember being on shift and being like, why is it designed this way? Or why is it so hot in this room? Or why is it so smelly or so difficult to get the waste out of here? And just having that appreciation that, we want to make this for everybody a great space to work in. So it just gave me that kind of appreciation. I don't know if I'd ever say I was the most experienced busser or event staff or dish attendant, but it definitely gave me that appreciation. And the event staff was probably what I did the most of, and the kind of setup and getting to do some really cool banquet halls and hospitality projects. It was awesome to put my own experience to just to have that kind of perspective on what it takes to get some of those events set up in a short amount of time, and what I think we could do to make it a good experience for that level of staffing outside of, high up operations and decision makers.
So you mentioned, I don't think we've got into this in Design Dish before, but you mentioned the heat of a room. How do you design or tailor your design to make that easier for the end user, for the dishwasher?
Well,
Make it a little less hot.
Yeah, it's interesting because, we own, the dish equipment. There's so much that goes into a dish room, and where all this latent and sensible heat comes from, the dish machines itself, the hot water that's getting sprayed around, the people inside the room. And so really working with our mechanical engineers to understand all these factors that go into why is this room getting so hot, and what they can try and do on their end to make it a more comfortable system. Obviously, there's always limitations and parameters to any projects that we need to appreciate and understand too. An air-conditioned system is not always cheap. Asking for 60 room air changes, in an hour is not something that any mechanical system can do. But we're going to talk to them about it and see what's possible. And then, it's communication. That's what we're in the business of, and communicating with the mechanical engineer to understand what their system is doing, what they're trying to do with their scope of work, and how we can help to make it the best room possible.
Yeah, that's a really great perspective, and bringing that holistic approach, I'm sure, helps you immensely within your design. At Ricca, you describe your approach as team-oriented and thoughtful. What does that look like in practice when you're leading a design team through a complex project?
I think for me, it's just, working with a small studio of 5 of us, that we're all bringing something to the table at any moment in the project, whether it's from initial concept to schematic all the way through CD and CA execution, what roles we play to help and support each other, at least internally. That's how I see our team, and the thoughtfulness is, throughout it, too, that I'm looking for as much feedback from them as they're looking from me. So our associates that are drafting up and seeing something that I might have, forgotten a hand sink, or I placed something and I couldn't appreciate what it looks like in the model at the time of that. So just, again, this is why I do the job, is the people. And, as much as I'm trying to teach them, they're teaching me, and we're working together at any point. I'm not working in a silo or a bubble. It's, I got a good group behind me, and we're all working together for a common goal to make these the best projects and really represent, what Ricca brings to the table to all these.
I think that's a common theme that I've throughout my conversations with the principals and EPs at Ricca, that holistic feedback loop where anybody can say anything or bring a point up at any time to not put someone else down, but for the end result of improving the design and improving our output as a
Yeah,
company.
definitely.
As a new principal, you're stepping into more leadership responsibility. What are the biggest shifts in your mindset or skill set you've had to make the move from a director to principal?
As any principal, you really become a key design driver early on in it. And so being very methodical and in the direction you're putting the project in, you're really setting the projects in motion, and that the decisions you're making are always really well informed. In other roles I played, I definitely would get the project a little bit later. So at that point, I think a lot of key decisions have been made. So really just appreciating that it's coming down to me. And so many people, their thoughts go into these projects, but really being the person to keep it going when a project is heading in the right direction, making decisions when something needs to stop and be thought out more, when you're seeing something maybe isn't fleshing out like it should be to meet the project goals.
Can you maybe not name the project, but can you describe an experience that you've had recently where you've had to bring in that principal versus director kind of thought process or perspective?
Again, maybe just a newer project where we're working on a dining hall, and clients asking for just my experience, really wanting to know what I have seen throughout the last 10 years on other dining halls, and really just asking the question, what seems right? And we were in particular talking about entry and exit sequence and all you care to eat, and just giving all these examples that I experienced with over the last 10 years. And there's a few ways to skin a cat, and being able to present all of them that I've seen was pretty exciting. So
For clients in sectors like education, hospitality, and corporate, all core to Ricca's portfolio, how do you balance creative flair and operational rigor in your design solutions?
well, I think it really comes down to first really understanding how they're currently operating, and challenging them at times on their operation, if it's the best solution or if there's other solutions to explore. And that kind of creates, the evolution of pushing the boundaries on what we're going to do next. We never want to give a client something that's impossible to operate or doesn't work for them, but challenge them at times. You can be the small food service provider and have labor problems, or staffing shortages, or cost of upkeep, but showing them all those different solutions that they can have as design drivers, and what excites them and what do they think is realistic. We've had so many projects in our portfolio where it really came from saying, this is how you're doing it now, which we understand, and we could certainly design this for you, but what have you thought about doing it this way? And showing them everything, and really mapping it out, and not just saying it, but giving them all the resources, all the great manufacturer and rep partners we work with and distributors, to show them that this could be something that is functional for them, no matter where they are in the country, or how they operate, or what they're doing, or what they're serving. So we really just try and educate.
Goes back to that communication
Yeah,
piece.
certainly does.
Can you walk us through one recent project or a favorite project you've led at Ricca where your full spectrum of background, graphics, hospitality, operations, architecture, have come into play? And then what was the challenge? What was your solution, and what was the outcome?
I couldn't think of a project where it doesn't all come into play, but certainly a really cool one that we've done recently was Lehigh University, which was a very interesting project because it started as an addition to existing building that was going to be an all you care to eat, and there was some rethinking of that during the school's planning of what envisioning that building, and it actually became a renovation and switched to a retail space. So we had worked hard with our partners at Envision to really understand what their needs were, and how that really changed all the work we had done through concept and schematic to see how we can make this function. Some of it was scrapping, but there was a lot of great work we did understanding the existing building at its core. So I remember graphically working through previously with some of my previous principals what this flow of the food service operation from the existing core that we were going to keep, going from an all you care to eat to now this retail solution, and how we work through the building now. And certainly there's a lot of things with sustainability in the dish room and how things get up and down this very complex old historic building. And then the challenges of going from such a different type of dining to retail, and really just working with the end users to make sure it still functioned and that we could build off of what we had learned in the previous studies of the building.
As you guide and mentor young designers at Ricca, what key lessons or capabilities do you emphasize now, and how did you learn it the hard way?
You can be more resourceful. There's more resources out there than you think. I remember coming into Ricca and being definitely overwhelmed with all the different equipment that I was learning, everything about exhaust systems and refrigerations, and having this itching feeling that tomorrow I need to know everything about it or I'm not going to have a job. And you just realize what a great industry we're in, with so many different partners that really help us understand all the particulars of any system, or even operators and chefs, that I was never a chef in a kitchen and I could never fully appreciate everything they're putting on the table. But again, we have just so many great partners and people that work inside Ricca that can help you. So I always try and emphasize that with anybody coming in here, that this is a bigger industry than you think, and there's plenty of people, and it's a hospitality industry. So most of the majority of everybody we're working with are great people to learn from and want to teach you.
It's really empowering the people on your team to utilize the resources and education that's on hand.
Definitely is.
Now, do you share findings within your team? How do you communicate those new resources or pieces of education?
Yeah, I think, not just the team, but the whole company has a very good system of educating something. We have Ricca universities that occur almost weekly now, where we're teaching each other. Throughout the year, we have downloads with people, things we might have seen on site, or hard lessons learned, good lessons learned. So we're always sharing examples with each other because we're trying everybody to learn. In 10 years, I'm still learning plenty and realizing there's things we could have been doing better from the start. So it just comes back down to our communication, that we're not trying to be siloed. We want to spread the knowledge, and whether it's a quick PowerPoint, a quick email that goes out to the company, and it's great just to have that in your back pocket. I can't imagine being at with how much knowledge we have there, how great people are at making sure people learn from their lessons too.
Now, thinking ahead 3 to 5 years, as a principal, what is your personal vision for your contribution for Ricca's growth and reputation in the food service design industry?
I really want to just be a thought leader and seen like that in the industry. I've really been trying to go out and network with all these different sectors. Been great to be involved with NACUFs and attending those shows for the last few years. Certainly want to get more involved in connecting with all of our friends in collegiate and university, attending hospitality and corporate, and really trying to, you know, let people know the Ricca knowledge is deep over here, and I'm a part of that, and really get out and speaking to people and sharing that knowledge, whether you're working with Ricca or not. So in 3 to 5 years, I'm hoping, you know, I've taken the opportunities where I can to speak to people, and definitely excited to have more of those opportunities come my way.
Now you've adopted or you've taken on a studio that a lot of its previous work has been in the Southeast, in North Carolina, South Carolina, that kind of area. Is there any industry, region, market that you personally would like to get some more work in and develop your relationships within that side of things?
Not necessarily, you know, again, I really do love university and collegiate. I think it's a great sector, always great people at the end of the day doing this. And uh, I don't think there's any sector I really shy away from, because I find excitement in all of it. And to have that sort of variety is nice from a day to day. I've certainly always appreciated the projects I have gotten to do in my neck of the woods here in Colorado, and all my friends and family, just to be able to tell them like, hey, that building there, you know, I was a small part of that. So I've always found that exciting. So certainly, you know, if those opportunities have been coming our way, I've been trying to chase them as best I could. But, you know, to say a region or anything, you know, I've always loved working on the East Coast. You know, it's a great part of the country, both of those in the Carolinas up into New England. So nothing bad there. And yeah, just trying to reach out wherever I can to help people where I can.
Before we go into our last question, I have a little bit of a fun, more personal experience question for you. So, what is one must-have kitchen or dining experience that you've had, either personally or on the job, that really inspired you?
This might just be short side because I did this recently. I had the opportunity to do a benchmark of New York City with our friends at University of Michigan, and we got to travel around the whole city and eat a lot of great food. And at the end of the day, you know, probably, you know, something so enlightening was going to uh, Russ and Daughter and getting, you know, a big bagel with a hefty schmear and some lox. And, you know, it's euphoric in a lot of sense just to be out here in dry Colorado and then having a good New York City bagel. I don't know. There's something enlightening about that. My family's from the East Coast, and anytime I go to New York, I say I got to get a bagel, a hot dog, and a slice of pizza, because you just can't get it anywhere in the world. So that's a good one. Other ones from my experience, you know, and that's been applicable to me was from getting to do some work in amusement parks, but you know, going to Disneyland and Disney World and getting to try some of their inventions is always really fun. And Lenny Condenzio, who, you know, was a big mentor of mine, you know, and he was working with Disney, you know, running Disney for a long time in culinary, and getting to experience some of those foods and how creative people are, definitely inspiring.
Now, I haven't found a good bagel here in Denver, but Lone, Colorado. Do you have any recommendations for me?
Uh, you know, I think I'm probably saying the name wrong off the top of my head. I think it's Rosam Bagels, and I think they have a few locations now, but that's probably a good one for me. Definitely not enough down here in DTC where we're at. You know, I think if if I wasn't at Ricca, I think a good business in Denver is a bagel shop, or you know, I'd be running like a hot dog stand.
I mean, you're making me crave a bagel. I think I might get that for lunch. So for our last question, I like to ask this to all of the principals, but why Ricca, and what does creating what's next mean to you?
Why Ricca? You know, since the moment I walked in, it's always been a really welcoming place, a place that I felt like I could grow. I certainly think I've proven that in 10 years, to start as, you know, kind of a Revit associate working on the computer to leading a team here. And, you know, just being able to always be a part of projects that feels like I'm creating something bigger than myself and just getting to learn. So I think that's why I always have chosen Ricca. And I think for creating what's next is, again, the wealth of knowledge I have around me that I get to learn from so many people inside of this office to really help discuss and figure out where it's all going. I think it'd be hard to do that as an individual because there's just so much out there to learn and know, and that we're able to come together as a leadership team always and talk about what we're seeing and what's happening makes it a lot easier to figure out where we're going next and how we're going to get there.
Yeah, you have that sounding board always, which is such
Yep,
a great thing.
exactly. Yeah.
And it's been so great to hear about your time at Ricca and your 10 years here. And I look forward to seeing where you take this principal role and what you do with Ricca.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to see where you go next.
I
So thank
appreciate
you so
that.
much. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for talking with me today, Greg.
Yeah. Thank you, Hayden. I appreciate everything. This is great.
Have a good one.
You too.